Hello, beautiful. I'm Lane Smith Brown, and this is episode number 33 of the Unleash Your Life podcast. And today we're talking about the realities we each live in, where they cross over with others, and where they are seemingly light years apart. It all depends on what's in the funnel. More on that in just a minute. This is the Unleash Your Life podcast, where you're going to learn to rewild yourself. I'm your host, Lane Smith Brown, and I'm a best-selling author and rewilding guide. And over the last 20 years, I've been guiding women back to their truest selves. You see, you were born wild with all the wisdom you will ever need to navigate your life in a beautiful and powerful way. Then, just like everyone else on the planet, you got tamed as you fell under the power and influence of others who were also tamed. All that taming you got as a kid has you convinced you are less powerful than you really are. I call all of that unconscious programming power leaks. And on this show, you're going to discover yours, and then you're going to choose to plug them so you can get back to the wild, wise, and powerful being that you are. So grab a coffee, glass of wine, or a favorite friend, or all three, and let's talk about what living your wild self can mean for you. We're back. Before we get going on today's topic, I just want to send a quick shout out to all of you who are taking the time to drop notes to me about your experience with this show. You really do make my day. And if there's anyone else out there that has hesitated on doing just that, please override that, will you? I really do feel like I'm in a conversation with you when I'm here. But when you write, I have even more proof that that is indeed the case. All right. I sat at a dinner table last night with people I knew well and people I didn't know at all. And I was struck by how different worldviews can be in a group of people who have so much in common. Certain topics can polarize quite quickly, even though moments earlier the table could be filled with laughter and good-natured teasing. Suddenly things can feel awkward. It can be easy to assume in a room full of friends that how we think things work is the way things work. And then suddenly a cold splash of water hits our face, hopefully figuratively only, and we are awakened to the truth. Raised voices bring me back to early childhood stuff, not because I was yelled at, but because I grew up in an unhealthy and manipulative silence. So my first reaction to loud noises is always shock and discomfort. I don't know how to respond, so I freeze and I get incredibly uncomfortable. But there is also an honesty in me hearing someone raise their voice because it immediately announces their fear. And that begins to ignite my curiosity. I've learned long ago not to engage with someone not capable of a conversation. You know, where you speak your opinion and give space to another to voice theirs. This one was an over-talker, and so I pulled back and let it go. There are so many clues held in those initial responses, and this isn't about analyzing him as much as it is about studying ourselves for clues to what's still lurking underneath in our subconscious minds, wanting to be released. I must say, for the most part, I believe I am surrounded by people who would find me odd if they knew what I believed, because most people still think life is happening to them. Some, in a more positive state, might declare that life is happening for them. In my mind, infinitely more powerful than the first is where I lean, toward the idea that I happen to my life. I create my experiences. I create the good, the bad, the wonderful, and the ugly. Whatever I label it in the moment, it morphs into something else as soon as my vantage point changes, usually from the passing of time or a small shift in my thinking. So our dinner companion was living in a world of big pharma and big government pulling all the strings behind the scenes. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with those ideas. I have no idea what's playing in the background. I know that history proves fear is a great way to control the masses. History proves that the seemingly irrational ones were speaking the truth all along before most of us were ready to hear it. I know over time we come to learn that there are all kinds of things at play, and I also know that many leaders think the masses are too stupid or irrational to handle all the information if it were put in front of them. While I'm listening to the interaction at the table, I got this picture of everyone around the table having a funnel over their heads. And I found myself wondering what was in each of their funnels to create their particular worldview. Where one had security, another could have had abuse. Where one had neglect, one could have had guidance. Where one had uncertainty, someone else could have had predictability. Where one had autonomy and opportunity, one may have been controlled by obligation. Where one had nothing but shame and insecurity, another had praise and acknowledgement. Where one felt lack or disappointment, another was raised to see abundance and benevolence in every direction. I suspect for most of us it was a mixed bag. I know from studying enough people that we can use whatever was dumped into our funnel in any way, shape, or form, depending on what we choose to do with it. When we use it to limit ourselves, it always becomes a power leak, and power leaks always leave us in high beta emotions like worry, fear, confusion, resentment, regret, and doubt, just to name a few. My childhood of silence and my dad using it to control the house ignited in me a need to speak up for others before it ignited the need to speak up for myself. Then it turned into someone who could speak confidently in all kinds of situations. When someone wants to speak to me on the phone, I run for cover. I hate talking on the phone. But put me on a Zoom call and I'm completely at ease. Perhaps it's because I need to see facial expressions and know they are congruent with what I'm hearing. We're all at varying stages of acknowledging and working through whatever was put in our funnel. Usually the behavior stays in play because we don't know we're doing it until something happens and we move into awareness. We see the behavior or pattern in ourselves, or we recognize our behavior in the mirror of someone else's behavior. You know the old saying, you spot it, you got it? There are clues to our power leaks everywhere if we're willing to look. The collective mantra that could help us navigate the world better could be this. Remember, don't believe everything you think. Don't believe everything you think. Don't believe everything you think. You see, most of what's in there, unless you've been doing the work of letting go of your conditioning for a while now, is just stuff you think. It's not real. It's not truth. It can't be measured or weighed. It's just something you think. And thoughts are the most malleable thing we have. We can turn a negative thought into a positive thought in a millisecond if we want to. So why do we spend so much time defending what it is we believe? None of it is real. A belief is the same as a thought. It can be changed or eliminated in less time than it takes you to say boo. I worked at a private religious college in my 20s, and in a faculty meeting, one of the professors declared that one of his students needed to be disciplined in some way because he kept asking questions in the class, and the professor found it disrupting. The questioner was preventing the rest of his class from just quietly absorbing his teachings. The ensuing conversation amongst the faculty about how to control the questioning student, instead of admonishing the professor for not teaching something that could bear scrutiny, began my earnest process of leaving that institution and the institution it represented. My God, people, if you believe something that can't be poked and prodded and examined and still remain whole, what the fuck are you defending it for? Sometimes we hold on to things, beliefs, opinions, bias, because we identify so strongly with those ideas that we convince ourselves if we changed our mind or grew beyond the idea in some way, we would lose ourselves and all that we are connected to. But what's on the other side of changing our minds, of opening up to a new way of seeing anything and everything that we once held dear? Freedom. Freedom is what happens when we learn we can change our minds or stop a behavior or challenge a habit. I recently had a conversation with a friend who was also at a private religious college many years ago, and she spoke of writing a paper with a differing viewpoint than her professor. In the paper, she stated what she knew he wanted to hear, and then confidently stated what her opinion was. She got a poor grade. Aspiring to go on to grad school, she adjusted her papers to ensure that her grades were consistently good, so she could pursue her dreams. Her opinion didn't change. She didn't suddenly believe what the professor believed, but she did set a precedent at an early age to adjust her behavior for people who had a certain level of power to affect her future. I don't know how that decision played out in her life, but if it did, I'm sure she's aware. For most people, that modified behavior, that subtle shift in our quote-unquote reality, often bleeds out in all kinds of ways and situations over the years. This quiet acquiescence of denying our true voice in order to get something else, usually some form of safety or validation, is the trade-off in most people's lives. The more we consciously do it, the more we learn to unconsciously do it. That's when our ego takes over and we put back or we pull back from expressing our truth because it's not worth the fight, not worth rocking the boat, not worth whatever we think the threat or consequence might be. But here's the cool thing. Just the fact that we can recognize these familiar tendencies means we can choose to change them or eliminate them. These behaviors can fall as soon as the light hits them. So let's keep shining the light. And we can do that by asking, where else do I do this behavior? Where else do I not speak my whole truth? Do I do it with my family, with my clients, with myself? Am I still looking for approval from someone outside of myself? Am I still giving someone the power to affect what I say out loud in public for the record? Where am I hiding the truth of who I am, what I am, what I desire, what pisses me off, what exhausts me, but I do it anyway? What's in your funnel? What's in your funnel shows up in your life, and often when we begin to see it in others, it is the way we start to recognize that it's in us. So you notice someone giving themselves away or not speaking their truth or always responding in anger or never following through with a promise. Take the time to see if any of that is about you. It may not be you. We don't have to find it in ourselves, but it's always worth a look to see if there's something you can now let go of. Remember now, in all of this work we are doing together, there doesn't need to be any self-judgment or remorse or shame or regret. What's done is done. This work is only about recognizing where we aren't living in the whole truth of who we are and what we've come to offer, and moving forward from there. The guy at the table was in fear, and there was no room for other voices at that table. So witnessing that keeps me in check to see that I don't show up in my life in that way. Oh, I still have opinions about things, but part of the purpose of this show is that we need to welcome a challenge. We need to embrace our diverse ideas and opinions because we can learn from each other. Our job is to do our work, period. However, if that work and the positive changes it creates in us inspires others to do their work, well, then we've got the seeds of a movement towards a world of people living from their truth instead of their fears. And that's something worth aspiring to. We're doing this, women. We are unleashing our truth and beauty. Recognize the amazingness in that, will you? Celebrate yourself as you do this work. And when you find yourself doing the old behaviors, just simply notice and move forward. It's messy, I know, but good work takes time. God, I love that you stayed. It's been a short one this time, but I love that you're interested in these conversations and you stay to the end. I love that you're opening yourself up. That's it for this one. You've got a new tool to add to the arsenal and a new tool to share. When someone frustrates you, just imagine a funnel above their head and wonder what's in their funnel, and then offer them grace to get to their true power when it's their time to do so. I'm not talking about not saying something that needs to be said, like calling someone on bad behavior. I'm talking about understanding that most everyone's quote-unquote bad behavior comes from their own conditioning, and coming at anyone, including yourself, with compassion and grace. And then saying something like, you can do better. You are better than you're acting right now. You're more perfect than you can believe right now. You're enough, and you're not alone. If it's too much right now to say that to someone else, practice it on yourself. It'll build your strength and resolve, and from that increase in self-awareness, those other conversations will get easier. All right, so before you go, another shout out to all of you who are taking the Plugging Your Power Leaks course. It makes my heart skip a beat every time a new name pops up on my phone screen, and I'm excited for how this momentum is picking up. We're becoming even more powerful together. If you're hearing these podcasts intermittently and would like to adjust that, hit subscribe and you'll get notified as soon as it drops. Thanks for showing up, and thanks for doing the work. Until next time, stay weird, stay curious, and keep popping your corks or plugging your power leaks. And if any of that was lost on you, pop back to episode number 9 and number 10. Ta for now. See you next time. Well, I hope this show rocked your world a little bit. If you want additional resources, check out the links in the show notes or at lanesmithbrown.com. And before you go, please subscribe to this podcast. It's how we get these tools into the world, and this world needs more wild women standing in their authentic power. Do that for me, will ya? Thank you.